As you are listening to this video, I want you to think about how unfair it is for liberals and racist conservatives to team up. How unfair it is for the spiritual bottom feeders to do what they do. Satanists, the worst criminals, LGBT community, feminists, atheists, and racists. Especially how unfair it is for blacks to historically be labeled with drapetomania and schizophrenia and other quote-unquote mental illnesses that have to do with reality, and they absolutely are pertinent and relevant when it comes to what is going on. They absolutely pertain to my situation. They are trying to play me out as schizophrenic, schizoaffective, and anything they can to make it seem like I'm out of touch with reality and to question my credibility. And this is historically what white racists have done. And psychiatry did not stop doing it when liberals took over psychiatry. Many psychiatrists have pointed out that psychiatry is disproportionately a liberal science, pseudoscience. And you have the feminist perspective. You have a lot of gays. I know from experience working in mental health, a lot of feminists, a lot of atheists. And as I've pointed out with Kathleen Taylor in other videos, they intend to take the Masonic war against religious fundamentalism or people being true to their religion and the morality in it to the mental health field and to attack religion using psychiatry. How unfair is it for these people to attack another black person with psychiatry? Their legal monopoly on force is not just the military and law enforcement, it is also forced medication and psychops, where they're creating the situation where they're forcing you to take drugs that you don't want to take that have very dramatic long-term effects. Think about all these things as you hear the rest of this video, the last 15 minutes of it. Thank you. So I've gone over the anger and injustice many times. And to me, it's very interesting. There are people that get it, and there are people that don't. When one can relay his message to a rational person, to a logical person, to somebody who has many friends and is accepted as normal in society, and they say, well, I see it your way, I don't think you need help. Never should anybody, question his choice of whether to seek help or not. Never should the government impose itself on that person. Never should anybody in a position of power or control victimize that person with impunity. So, I have 4 questions for you real fast. How long have you known me, would you say?
14 years.
All right, do you think that I need psychiatric medication or psychiatric help?
No.
Never. Should a person be put in my position?
So, did that atheist guy really tell you to provoke me to go to the psych ward?
Yes.
It is because psychiatry has no valid way to diagnose mental illness. All over the world, it has been used to suppress dissent. Let me give you a few cases real quick. I saw this on Wikipedia the other day. The political abuse of psychiatry. A long time ago, I made a video about this where I referenced this huge paper that was done on it. And here's some, it talks about drapetomania was supposed mental illness by Samuel A. Cartwright in 1851 that caused
black slaves to free captivity. Second one, they say in the United States, political dissenters have been involuntarily committed. For example, in 1927, a demonstrator named Aurora DeAngelo was sent to a mental health facility for psychiatric evaluation after she participated in a rally in support of Sacco and Vanzetti. Now, a lot of you don't know about those guys. That's a story for another day. Interesting story. Has to do with what I'm talking about. Let me just stick to this. When Clennon W. King Jr., a black pastor and civil rights activist, attempted to enroll at the all-white University of Mississippi for summer graduate courses in 1958, the Mississippi police arrested him on the grounds that any nigger who tried to enter Ole Miss must be crazy. Keeping King's whereabouts secret for 48 hours, the Mississippi authorities kept him confined in a mental hospital for 12 days before a panel of doctors established the activist's sanity. So this has taken you, chronologically through some of the most famous cases of political abuses in America alone. Oh, it gets worse. They have a California section. I'll get to that in a second. In the 1964 election, Fact Magazine polled American Psychiatric Association members on whether Barry Goldwater was fit to be president and published The Unconscious of a Conservative, a special issue on the mind of Barry Goldwater. This led to the banning of diagnosing public figures when you have not performed an examination or been authorized to release information by the patient. This became the Goldwater rule. In the 1970s, Martha Beale Mitchell, wife of U.S. Attorney General John Mitchell, was diagnosed with a paranoid mental disorder for claiming that the administration of President Richard M. Nixon was engaged in illegal activities. Many of her claims were later proved correct, and the term Martha Mitchell effect was coined to describe the mental health misdiagnosis when accurate claims are dismissed as delusional. So what you're seeing, as much as I hate to compare myself to a woman, with me and other dissidents, is the Martha Mitchell effect. And I'll put a link to this in the comments. There's more stuff here I'm not going to cover. In 1972, Thomas Eagleton was forced to withdraw as a vice presidential candidate for being treated for depression. In 2006, Canadian psychiatrist Colin A. Ross's book was published titled The CIA Doctors. Sorry, it just went into screensaver mode. Wow. It is. Wow. This is unheard of. Hold on a second. All right. It's unheard of. It's not supposed to do that. I talk about this, the book presents evidence based on 15,000 pages of documents received from the CIA via the Freedom of Information Act. There have been systematic, pervasive violations of human rights by American psychiatrists during the recent 65 years. That's 2006. Now we're at 2010. The book, The Protest Psychosis, How Schizophrenia Became a Black Disease, by psychiatrist Jonathan Metze, who also has a PhD in American Studies, was published. The book covers the history of the 1960s Ionia State Hospital located in Ionia, Michigan, and now converted to a prison, and focuses on exposing the trend of this hospital to diagnose African Americans with schizophrenia because of their civil rights ideas. The book suggests that in part the sudden influx of such diagnoses could be traced to a change in wording in the DSM-2, which compared to the previous edition added hostility and aggression as signs of the disorder. Some people, notably clinical psychologist Bruce E. Levine, argued that oppositional defiant disorder, which can be easily used to pathologize anti-authoritarianism, is an abuse of psychiatry. In 1973, the American Psychiatric Association declassified homosexuality as a mental disorder, and the American Psychological Association Council of Representatives followed in 1975. In 2014, Mercury News, I've covered a lot of this stuff, but it's interesting when you put it chronologically together. And Okay, anyway. In 2014, the Mercury News published a series of articles detailing questionable use of psychotropic drugs within California's foster care system, where bad behavior is attributed to various mental conditions and little care is provided besides drugs. Likewise, many experts question the long-term effects of high dosages on developing brains, and some former patients reported permanent side effects after stopping the meds. I talk about that. It was actually, I believe it was called Drugging Our Kids or Drugging Our Children. I've covered that. I've covered the long-term effects of psychiatric meds over and over again. I've covered and covered and covered it. The last thing they have noted, then I'll go to the California section, and then I'll go psychiatric reprisals, and I'll stop. According to journalist Jonathan Turkey in Newsweek's magazine, in June 2015, U.S. District Judge Richard M. Berman ordered conservative filmmaker and activist Dinesh D'Souza to continue psychological counseling for a 4-year period, despite numerous recommendations to the contrary by well-respected private and court-appointed mental health personnel. D'Souza pleaded guilty to a single count of making illegal contributions in the name of others as part of the campaign of Wendy Long for New York Senate. This occurred during a post-confinement hearing. D'Souza was seeking to reduce the 4-year community service sentence by reference to his home confinement period. Berman balked and said that he said the two periods as distinct, a position that courts would likely take in similar cases, in referring to the psychological counseling aspect. D'Souza's counsel submitted evidence that the court-ordered psychiatrist found no indication of depression or reason for medication. His own retained psychologist also provided a written statement concluding there was no need to continue the consultation. However, Judge Berman simply disagreed and said that he thinks more counseling will help, while noting that this is not punishment. Quote unquote, I only insisted on psychological counseling as part of Mr. D'Souza's sentence because I wanted to be helpful. I am requiring Mr. D'Souza to see a new psychological counselor and to continue the weekly psychological consultation, not as part of his punishment or to be retributive. The court insisted I am not singling out Mr. D'Souza to pick on him. Our requirement for psychological counseling often comes up in my hearings in cases where I find it hard to understand why someone did what they did. California. 5150 involuntary psychiatric hold. There are many instances of usage of California law section 5150, which allows for involuntary psychiatric hold based on the opinion of a law enforcement official, psychological professional, or many other individuals who hold no qualification for making psychological assessment, which have been challenged as being unrelated to safety and misused as an extension of political power. Exactly what's going on in my case. My case is similar to D'Souza's in that I have contradicting views from quote-unquote mental health personnel, and absolutely 5150 has been used on me countless times. They have no business sending me to the psych ward. No proof of a crime. These kind of he said, she said things, you know, cops in any other case will say, hey, there's nothing I can do. He says this, you say this. I've had them tell me that. You know, he says this, you say that. You know, when people have tried to accuse me of something, I said, well, they did this. He said, well, you're saying this, they're saying this. I know that that's how they operate. But when it comes to this, when it comes to the most profitable industry, coincidence? They happen to be given the benefit of the doubt. Psychiatric reprisals. Whistleblowers who part ranks with their organization have had their mental stability questioned, such as, for example, the NYP veteran who alleged falsified crime statistics in his department and was forcibly committed to a mental institution. And they give me a reference there, 55, go there, Cop hauled off to psych ward after alleging fake crime stats. All right, let me just go to their link. It just says where it's retrieved. And it took me to rawstory.com. All right. Adrian School, I believe his name is. Let me see. I hate going to these sites. I don't trust any of these sites. Adrian Schoolcraft's description of being taken in handcuffs to a psych ward suggests that the nation's largest police force could have a vindictive underbelly. He claims that cops risk retribution when they try, as he did, to blow the whistle on supervisors faking of crime statistics to make stats look better. And that is just that is nothing compared to what I've been exposing for 7 years on YouTube alone, with 4,000 videos and over 10,000 valid sources. When you hear the body of evidence, it reminds me of what I say all the time. Don't be surprised when the people who do what they do, what they do. And you better not be surprised when they do it to the uncontrolled opposition, especially when someone is the top martial artist, the son of 2 doctors, one of them being a brain surgeon, the other a National Merit Scholar. When he has a degree in software engineering. When he's tall, dark, and handsome. Don't you be surprised. Don't you for one moment be surprised when the people who are in charge of social control, many of them having martial arts training or some sort of hand-to-hand combat training, and have been called out by this individual, use psychiatry as a control mechanism for their inability to prove him wrong, them trying to maintain their reputations, or what's left of them, depending on how you look at it. And their inability to beat him. So they can't prove him wrong. They worried about their reputation, by getting people to think about these things, and they cannot beat him in his martial artist challenge. What position have I put him in? A very precarious position. I've put them in a very compromising position indeed. And historically, I mean, in Wikipedia, the one place that I found, I don't know, I'll have to look over it again, but what, the thing I found right after the article about the chronological order of some key events in the political abuse of psychiatry, and its history, was California, the state that I live in. 5150. This liberal state, San Francisco, Berkeley, Bohemian Grove, Hollywood, this mind control center, home of COINTELPRO and MK Ultra. Are any of you surprised when a bunch of Donald Ewan Cameron type bitches, well, I'm out of time, thank you,